It's a computer. All right, we are good to go. So what are we going to talk about today? Today, we're going to talk a little bit about non-exercise activity and how it's related to our goal as it pertains to weight loss, but really more importantly, just how practical it is and how big of a role it plays, even though it doesn't get as much of, it doesn't get as much attention in the media. And when, even when we talk about stuff at the gym often. So I try to talk about this stuff as much as possible with people. And anytime we get into the weight loss discussion, non-exercise activity, thermogenesis, or whatever you want to call it, NEAT, we'll call it NEAT, is something that has to be a part of the equation. And it needs to be a part of the equation forever, okay? It needs to be a part of the equation forever. So we're going to dive more into that, but let's start with just energy expenditure as a whole. So like how we burn energy and what it's divided up into, okay? So some people will say there's 3 main sections. Some people will say 4. I've got 4 on this slide. It's important to know that metabolism is pretty much just the sum of like the stuff that we burn and the stuff that we bring in. We're always breaking something down and we're always building something up, but our metabolism it's always working, right? Regardless of our hormonal situation. And during periods of higher activity, we'll burn more calories, I almost say cavities, than when you're at rest. But even when you're at rest, your body is always expending energy. So as I sit here and talk to you, I'm twitching my chair, I sit up tall, right? Our body has to expend energy for that. We have to get that energy from somewhere. Now, how you burn energy or expend calories, remember calorie, that word is just a measure of heat when we utilize things for energy. But how we do that is called our daily, let me let this person in, it's called our daily energy expenditure. And it's generally organized into 3 or 4 categories, depending on what you're reading. We're going to go with 4 today. So we'll talk about these quickly individually, and then we'll get into like the meat and potatoes of it. So first we got basal metabolic rate, right? These are your calories you burn at rest. Some people call this your resting metabolic rate. We can get a measurement of this when you do an in-body scan at BFP. It's on the piece of paper or in your app. And it's the amount of energy that your body uses to sit around. Okay, it's to support the functions of your organs, your physiological systems, and it comprises, so like how much energy we burn resting is 60 to 75% of our total amount of energy each day. So part of what's included in that is muscle tissue. So muscle tissue is responsible for about 27% of how many calories we burn at rest each day. So this is why one of the reasons we stress strength training at BFP, because there's a difference between being skinny and losing weight, being skinny and losing weight and being fit. And that's how much muscle you have, because the more muscle you have, the more calories you burn at rest. So about 27% of resting metabolic rate is based on how much muscle you have. So the more you have, the more calories you will burn at rest. Okay, so that's just an aside, very, very important thing. And then there's other things, right? Excuse me, not 27%. Muscle is responsible for about 18%. So there's certain organs that are responsible for more, like we have on the slide here. So liver, about 27%. Your brain is about 19%, and skeletal muscle is about 18%. So it's pretty cool to think about the brain too. That was why I wanted to give you this full picture of everything, because you got to include kidneys, liver, but those are the ones that are responsible for pretty much the most. Your heart's a pretty big chunk of it as well, to keep that thing beating all day long. But the brain is responsible for a big chunk, right? About 19%. So that's why oftentimes if we're low on energy, or if we haven't eaten in a while, we don't think as effectively, or we don't communicate as clearly, because our brain needs more energy to function more effectively. And of course, there's other things that play into it too, like sleep. But that's just one interesting thing as it pertains to basal metabolic rate or resting metabolic rate. Then you've got the thermic effect of food. And this is pretty important. And this is another reason you're gonna, if you think about the BFP high 5 habit, so we've been going through protein and veggies at every meal, getting at least 7,000 steps a day this week, increasing your water intake. All these things are habits that if you do these regularly, there you go, take a drink of water, I see. All these things contribute to us being more efficient or really less efficient at rest so that we burn more calories on an ongoing basis. The goal is not just to help people lose weight, it's to help them increase muscle, get more fit, but then maintain the results that they get, which is a big problem. And these foundational habits are the things that can lead to people maintaining results. Because sometimes we lose weight and we get obsessed with just continuing to lose weight, and it's not healthy. Other times we can lose weight and we learn that, okay, where I'm at, I feel great, I look great, I'm very confident in myself. I don't need to lose any more weight, but I also don't want to gain back what I lost. So I need to learn ways to live my life, enjoy my life, but also not gain back, go back to where I was. These habits, the BFP high five, are that, and that's the approach that we take. So the thermic effect of food, this lends to why we try to focus so heavily on protein. This talks about the energy the body uses to convert food into more energy for us to use later, or for us to use like immediately or soon, or to move it to a location to be stored as fat and use it as a later time. This takes up about 10% of your total calorie burn each day. So we were looking at how different organs and things from your basal metabolic rate can be responsible for 60 to 75% of how many calories you burn each day. And really the only one of those that we control is muscle mass. So that's why another reason why it's an important one to focus on. How much energy we burn each day just from the act of eating and digesting food is about 10%. So the higher the thermic effect of a given food, and generally we just measure this in macronutrients, the less efficient the process is for us to digest it, the more energy it takes to metabolize it, to break it down, and the more heat is generated in the process. Remember, calories are just a measurement of heat in our body. Are you talking to me? I always say, she's talking to my daughter, and I thought she was trying to correct me. So again, the higher the thermic, so think when you hear the word thermic or thermogenesis, like generally it's mostly referring to heat. And when the body's hotter, it means that it's working harder on the inside, essentially to an extent. So let's look at our macronutrients with the thermic effect of food, right? So fat, fat is 9 calories per gram. And at its most inefficient digestion point, about 3% of those calories are going to be utilized to digest it. So fat takes about 3% of the calories from it just to digest it. When we bring in carbs, it takes about 5 to 10% of those calories to digest those carbs. Protein, the most amazing thing ever, protein, so I'm sure that German Shepherd I see now probably likes protein, takes 20 to 30% of the calories, right? So if you're bringing 100 calories of protein, 20 to 30 of those calories are being used just to digest it, right? 100 calories of carbs, you're only going to use about 5 to 10 of those calories to digest it. And with fat, if you bring in 100 calories of fat, which is not much because fat is more calories per gram, you're only going to use like 0 to 3 calories of that to digest it. So this is another reason why, as it pertains to weight loss maintenance, and then of course muscle and all that stuff, protein is the most important nutrient to bring in and to bring in consistently. We need to be bringing in plenty of protein. Not only because it helps us build muscle, it helps you feel fuller longer, which is partially related to how hard it is to digest, but it helps you burn a few more calories every meal than the other nutrients do. So although this isn't going to make you like drop weight just insanely, all these little things, the BFP high fives, are those small things that contribute outside of exercise to add, or like other pieces of the pie, right? That we need to be doing ongoing all the time. So then we've also got the thermic effect of physical activity. So exercise, right? This accounts for the remaining of energy. And let me rephrase that. The thermic effect of physical activity is not just exercise. It's also non-exercise. It's all physical activity. So that accounts for anywhere from 15 to 30% of our daily energy expenditure. So remember we said food, the thermic effect of food was about 10%. And then we said anywhere from 60 to 75% for organs and things like that. And now we're somewhere for all physical activity between 15 and 30% of how much energy we burn each day. So you see, it's not the largest part, right? That resting, our organs, our body functioning is what provides, like us just sitting here listening to me talk provides more energy expenditure, more calories burned each day than exercise could ever hope to do. So included in this isn't just when you exercise, also that term EPOC. You may have heard this if you've ever seen Orange Theory's marketing, post-exercise oxygen, excess post-exercise oxygen consumption. So that's the amount of energy the body burns after exercise to return to resting or to return to its normal state. And there's different types of exercise that lead to a higher level of EPOC than other ones. So to an extent, the more intense exercise is, the higher the level of EPOC afterwards. So why does that matter? Because if EPOC is higher, so how many calories you burn after exercise as a result of exercise to get back down to resting state, the higher that is, the more that will contribute to weight loss or maintenance of weight loss. So EPOC is important. Now it's a small amount. So interval training with some type of strength training or high intensity interval training with cardiovascular exercise, like really high intensity and then rest, tends to yield that and then heavy strength training tends to yield the highest levels of EPOC as compared to steady state cardiovascular exercise or lower intensity exercise. So if you do a hard strength training session and you're really lifting heavy, or say like around number 8, 9, and 10 of each set, you're really starting to struggle, that gives you a solid excess post-exercise oxygen consumption, or you burn more calories at rest after the exercise than you would if you just went for a 30-minute, 45-minute jog. Same thing with high intensity interval training like we generally do on Tuesdays and Thursdays. That leads to more calories burned after exercise than like a low intensity jog. So you get a little more bang for your buck. It's not like a massive amount. It's probably anywhere from 20 to 100 calories post-exercise that you wouldn't burn that day had you not exercised. But again, all these things we're talking about, they add up, right? It's just about these little pieces of the puzzle to build this whole picture. And when it comes to back to what we started with the thermic effect of physical activity, there's planned exercise and then there's spontaneous exercise, like you got to run to take your kid their lunchbox to the bus stop before the bus gets there. And then there's also like any form of physical exertion, like standing up from a seated position. You can burn, it adds calories burnt to the day as compared to being at resting. But there's other forms this is what I want to get to, is non-exercise physical activity. So this is called NEAT, and NEAT plays a significant role in helping to maximize the total amount of calories burned in a single day. Generally, it's thought as much as up to like potentially 30% of your physical activity calories can come from NEAT. So NEAT, non-exercise activity, thermogenesis, big word, just call it NEAT, is the energy expended for everything we do that does not include sleeping, eating, or exercise. And it ranges from little things to like standing, to me moving my hands around like while I'm doing this, cleaning the house, chasing after your kids in the house, taking care of your kids. But over the past few years, researchers have begun investigating like the remaining 110 to 115 hours of the week that we're awake as a fitness solution, weight loss solution, body composition solution, rather than just the few hours of week that we exercise, right? So, because we exercise like 3 to 5 hours a week for most people, which is plenty, by the way, and you're going to learn more about that now. And when we look at these other hours where we can look at non-exercise activity, the results are really, really impressive. And they provide a lot of opportunities to achieve effective and sustained weight loss or increased lean mass, muscle mass, without complicating your lives. So without finding more time to exercise, doing things like that, maybe things we don't like doing, or even getting out of your comfort zone. We can stay in your comfort zone when it comes to NEAT. So we all know, you guys go to BFP, you know that a structured and more importantly, consistent exercise program combined with eating well while we're in the challenge can help you lose weight, and get the body type you're looking for. But we don't need to push ourselves, into leaving buckets of sweat on the floor every single day. And we don't have to eat foods that taste like cardboard. And that's the point that I want to get across today. That's where the NEAT comes in. So we're going to look at that. So here's an example. Now I'm going to read this to you. So if you'd rather listen, but you can read it as well. So for example, you have a 145-pound person burns approximately 102 calories an hour while performing their office job. So me sitting here at my desk typing per hour, well, I don't weigh 145 pounds. I'm heavier than that, so that would be more. I'm like 180 pounds. But in a seated position, about 1.7 calories per minute. So that burn, but if they just stood up, did the exact same office duties in the same office, it would go from 102 to 174 calories per hour. So that's not a massive increase, right? But it does translate to 18,000 calories, or a little over 5 pounds, depending on how we measure that, over a year. So if they're working 250 days. So by comparison, the same person, if they sat every time and did not stand, they need to squeeze in 60 30-minute runs at 5 miles per hour just to achieve that 18,000 calories that we just talked about. So I hope that gives you some perspective on how important non-exercise activity is as compared to just exercise alone, right? These things need to be together, right? We need to be doing both of these things, but non-exercise activity plays a massive role in the process. So I think you kind of get it, right? Like exercise alone is generally inadequate unless we find more time to work out in the day. And I want you to rethink that approach to where we can burn calories, all day long, right? Like, to put it kind of like, make the entire day your weight loss battlefield or your fit battlefield. Because remember I said there's a difference between being skinny and being fit. And that battlefield is the area where we can use to complement the exercise that we want to do and not feel like we have to do. So sitting all day really only welcomes weight gain. Okay. So then how do we do it? How do we use NEAT to like skyrocket how many calories you burn? Again, you don't have to do what this woman's doing right here. You don't have to be covered in chalk, laying on the floor, dying after a workout. It's some benefits of exercise, right? Like we can get stronger, more efficient heart. We can reduce the risk of heart disease, diabetes, thicker bones, lower cholesterol, all that good stuff. But again, perspective, right? 2 to 3 workouts a week won't magically help us lose weight. And it can be frustrating when that doesn't work. So we're going to look at this table. Some of this might look confusing to you. It might not look confusing to you, but it provides information on calories burned through several different types of exercise. So now we're actually looking at how many calories you burn during exercise, whereas just a few minutes ago, we talked about the non-exercise activity. But I wanted to give you some perspective here as well. So this is in comparison to the total number of calories that we eat each week. So for an average person, and nowadays, way back when they first started doing research, an average guy was 150 pounds. Now it's 194.7 pounds. The average American woman is, in this research, is 164.7 pounds. And based on those specific weights, the woman eats 12,397 calories per week, and the male eats 17,528 calories per week. So if they go for a walk 3 times a week for an hour, the woman gets 770 calories out of that, 777. So that is 6.3% of the calories that she's bringing in. So a very, very small amount of the calories that she's eating is being expended through exercise. So walking is great, and we're going to talk about it, but it's not enough by itself if you're sedentary throughout the day. If you did cardio, so think like running 5 miles per hour, 3 times at 30 minutes, again, you burn a few more calories because you're going to go a longer distance probably, but you still only burn 8.2%. You guys see my mouse moving, 8.2% of what you ate that week. Guys, it's 6.9%, so it's even lower. So it's like running worked better for the female here than it did for the guy. I mean, all of this, honestly, because the guy's eating a lot more. So if we look at circuit training, which is much more similar to what we do at breakaway, we get anywhere from like 35 to 45 minutes of movement at breakaway. But with circuit training, say you're working 80% of the time of 30 minutes, which we would get more than that even in a 50-minute session at BFP, 4 times, it's going to take you up to 11.6% of how much you eat during the week. So if you work out at BFP 4 times a week, you're going to burn about 11.6% of what you eat each week. Okay, so that is the highest, right? That's part of the reason we train the way we do a breakaway, because you get the most bang for your buck. But again, those percentages overall are fairly low, at 5.2 to 11.6% of what we eat each week coming from exercise. So we need to move more or eat less if the goal is to lose weight generally. And we don't love people to eat a lot less, because that's not the healthiest way to do things. And we also don't love for them to eat a ton more, to move a ton more, because most of us don't have time. And that's just life. It is what it is. I mean, we go through different seasons. Sometimes we do have time, sometimes we don't. So the answer is to move as much as you can without it being structured exercise, and again, non-exercise activity. So I'm going to go through a couple different ways to do that. First of all, let's talk about some obvious ones. Play with your kids more. Park further away from the store. Walk to the store. This stuff adds up. Remember, little pieces of the puzzle. Take the stairs instead of the elevator. Use a push lawnmower instead of a riding lawnmower, although that's almost done for this year. Just move as much as you can. You don't have to stand up all day long at your desk, but stand up as much as you can. Get up, take walk breaks, move your head around. All this stuff contributes to non-exercise activity. So standing is one way, and it makes a big difference. So a growing body of evidence shows that like sitting still for too long can be hazardous to your health. And simply standing is one form of NEAT that can help increase your daily caloric expenditure, right? We talked about that earlier, and there's other studies that show standing sheds 88 calories an hour as compared to sitting. Walking burns a lot more, 210 calories an hour. Most people get less back pain. So if you sit for long periods of time, things tighten up, and your muscles can hurt, especially in your lower back, and it can contribute to like bad posture. By the way, side note, posture, the only good posture there is not like this all the time. The only good posture there is an ever-changing one. So moving as much as possible, whether you look different from somebody else, doesn't matter. The only good posture is an ever-changing one. So if you sit like I do at a desk to do stuff like this, I'd always be here moving around, just keeping things moving, ever-changing posture. So standing as much as possible is going to be one way that we can increase our non-exercise activity outside of those sort of common sense things like park further away from the store, taking the stairs, using a push lawnmower, things like that. The second thing, this is actually more structured physical activity. This almost isn't even NEAT, but walking, we just talked about like that, right? So I think that not a lot of us can make more time to go lift weights. Not a lot of us can make more time to go do interval training. But what we can do is grab our kids, throw them in a stroller, put the dog on a leash, stay in go in the backyard, whatever we got to do just to walk more throughout the day. So the U.S. Department of Health has been promoting 10,000 steps a day as an achievable goal for daily physical activity. And I know that's actually hard for a lot of people. It wasn't 10 years ago when I first got into the fitness industry. It is now because of how jobs have changed. And for me, it's very challenging to hit 10,000 steps a day. Like if I don't go coach a couple of sessions, like I'm at almost 7,000 right now because I coached this morning. But when I don't, I have to be intentional about this. But even if you don't make it to 10,000 steps, just adding as many extra steps in as you can is such an important component of non-exercise activity, that NEAT, because it can help you burn more calories throughout the day, and not to mention a bunch of other stuff. So there's a study, 2013, that found that as many as 67% of older adults are sedentary for more than 8.5 hours of the day that they're awake. And additionally, that's part of the reason we get weaker as we age. Additionally, as many as 50% of adolescents and younger adults in the United States share pretty much the same stat. And some of that could be school, some of it could be work, but it's not a surprise that many of us find ourselves affected by like obesity, being overweight, and looking for strategies to lose weight. And I think walking is the most undervalued tool that you can have. I think exercise has its place, and walking is exercise, but walking on top of exercise is like the magic pill for helping you get leaner and stay lean as well. You should think of that as like one of the biggest tools. Is like your hammer in your fitness toolbox, because it helps regulate your appetite, improves cardiovascular health, circulation, enhances your recovery from exercise, so less soreness. If we were carrying weights, it could help with bone strength, and of course aids in weight loss. So cool thing about walking, it improves your appetite and control. So unlike other forms of exercise, it doesn't actually increase your appetite. Most exercise, like a hard run, increases your appetite, or a long, slow run. Working out, interval training increases your appetite. And so this means that sometimes you can out-eat your exercise because of the increase in hunger signals that come along with high intensity exercise. Walking doesn't come with that. So walking, again, is an excellent strategy for inducing more weight loss, or just helping somebody maintain or decreasing stress and feeling better. So likewise, a walking habit can also increase your resting metabolic rate, which is also called what? Basal metabolic rate, which we talked about earlier. And it can, because of that, it can lead to increases in lean body mass. So it's often more dramatic that this happens to people who have never worked out at all, or more sedentary and are new to an exercise program, but it can contribute. And again, it's also like an excellent weight maintenance strategy for a person who's previously lost weight and become more conditioned. So whether you're brand new, it's going to help increase lean mass. If you're not brand new to exercise and you've lost some weight, it's phenomenal for a weight maintenance strategy. And there's research to prove it. So ways that it helps specifically with weight loss, you burn more calories, right? So if you walk 3 miles an hour, which is a fairly brisk pace, you'll burn between 4 to 7 calories a minute, depending on how much you weigh and how conditioned you are. So an example, think of a 140-pound person who's moderately conditioned. They'll expend about 4 calories a minute or 120 for like a 30-minute walk. Now, if we got a 250-pound less conditioned individual, then they're going to expend approximately 7 kilocalories or 7 calories per minute with the same walk, but they'll burn about 210 calories. So, the larger you are, the more calories you burn from exercise. Again, this stuff doesn't seem super high, but a 30-minute walk every night after dinner for 7 days can create an additional calorie expenditure of 840 to 1,470 calories a week. So that can be the difference in like the beer that you drink every night or the wine that you drink every night, right? Like it can help cancel that out, which isn't the healthiest way to look at it, but it's true. It could also just be bonus calories burned, not to mention if you go walk with your spouse, if you have one, it's phenomenal for just spending time together, the walk with the dog, all that good stuff. And these numbers can add up over time, right? And it can lead to some pretty significant results. So if losing weight is your primary reason for exercising, NEAT has to be a component of your plan. 1 pound of body fat can provide approximately 3,500 calories worth of energy. So if we can increase your NEAT by 200 calories a day, or just walking 2 miles, while also making better choices with food, and then exercising regularly. So if you make better choices with food, like you eat a little bit less, like take 300 calories out a day, which is like a 12-ounce soda, small bag of chips. And if we do we do that 7 days a week, right? You just 2 miles a day, eat a little bit less than you were if you were gaining weight. Then you could lose 1 pound of fat in 7 days, depending on, there's other factors that play into this. But it's pretty small, but making those little efforts and adding more NEAT along, with eating well is like magic when it comes to weight loss and weight loss maintenance. So that's the end of my presentation. Hopefully everybody learned a little bit about non-exercise activity. And let's see in the chat. Oh, okay, Rachel had to jump off. If you have any questions, we'll have the recording so anybody can go back and watch it. But I'm going to stop sharing. So what questions does everybody have? And it doesn't have to be related to what I just talked about. Again, we want these to function as like an office hour. So if you had any questions related to anything else in the challenge, you can go ahead and ask as well. And I'm going to sit here and kind of stare at you a little bit because usually it takes a few minutes for people to get the juices flowing. And this is coffee. This counts as my water intake, by the way, in case you didn't see my last presentation. Coffee counts towards your water intake. It does not dehydrate you. Come on, somebody's got to have a question. I feel like I get more questions in the evenings. Robin, you got something? I see your camera just turned on.
No, but I turned on my camera so you knew I wasn't
I cannot
ignoring
hear
you.
you. You unmuted, but I didn't get any sound.
Oh, can you hear me now? No?
I don't know why that is. Well, if you do have one, just throw it in the chat if I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? No? So weird.
Probably just need to choose a different microphone. I get that sometimes too.
I think I have a question.
What's up, Jordan?
What's up?
Wait, maybe I can't hear, because I can't hear Jordan either. What's wrong with my, let me test my sound real quick.
I can hear them. Can you hear me?
That's why. It's me.
It's you.
Boom, boom. Okay, so we'll go Jordan and then Robin. What's up, Jordan?
So how we're like comparing how everyone would be different, even with their like BMR and like resting calories and stuff. But like if you have a slower metabolism or faster metabolism, like does that take into effect how much you could be losing or burning in your calories?
So maybe you can, like, what do you mean when you say a slower metabolism?
So like, cause like I've always heard like if like you're bigger, you have a slower metabolism or like something like that, like you don't digest food as fast or like just stuff like that. I just didn't know if like when you're burning the calories and you're supposed to be digesting the food that you're intaking, if you're not digesting as fast, or if that even matters, if that like affects whether you're gaining or losing, if that makes sense.
So as far as digesting food, I have never read that if somebody is overweight that they digest food that much differently.
I don't
personally, I've not read that.
I don't think it's facts. I just hear rumors.
No, I think it's a good question, because I might have to get you to ask it again by the time I get done with this part though. But yeah, I think that would be more related to physiological health.
Well,
like GI tract, stuff like that, right? And there's always going to be variances between like myself and my wife in terms of, you know, how my body digests protein and how hers does. Guys probably actually digest it quite a bit differently, just because of how much more muscle mass guys tend to have, you know, based on size. But so you're asking, can you ask the question part again?
Basically, I'm asking if your metabolism can take effect in how your digestive system is going to go, like with how you're going to digest things differently, and if that affects how many calories you're losing.
So metabolism is like the sum of all of your movement in a day, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the organs and everything that I just talked about. So the terms slow metabolism and high metabolism, I would probably like just go it within reason, because it depends as always, but like throw that out of your vocabulary. Like it's a thing, but metabolic rate, like resting metabolic rate, is generally what we're talking about when we're talking about somebody's metabolism. And the more somebody weighs, the higher their resting metabolic rate is. The smaller somebody is, the lower their resting metabolic rate is. So that is going to dictate how many calories you burn at rest. Neither are going to affect like differences among people, like in how they digest food. So like most people it's going to take about, that's why it's like a range, 20 to 30% to digest protein. But yeah, like anybody who's overweight or anything like that, they're generally going to burn more calories at rest than somebody who is much smaller. But they're also usually going to have more muscle mass, and that's part of the reason they're burning more calories at rest as well. So usually, if we're just talking about resting metabolic rate as a part of metabolism, I'm going to have a higher metabolism than my wife is, because I outweigh her by quite a bit.
Okay.
So if somebody loses weight, like it becomes harder to lose weight. You've ever heard that, right? Like when you lose weight, because you have to adjust, because our metabolism slows as we lose weight. It decreases. And sometimes if we do it too fast and too much, our body will kind of kick into this mode where it's like, uh-oh, we need to not burn energy as much. We got to hold on to some stuff because, you know, we've lost a lot of weight. We're not bringing in as much food. I got to slow things down a little bit. And that's kind of what our body can do if we eat too low calorie for too long. It's not really called starvation mode, but it's just how our body adapts to an extent. And that's why it can help to eat more for a while and then cut back down for sometimes. But I know I just kind of rambled there. But yeah, so God, now I can't even get back to the question because I went so far off.
No, it's okay. You still answered it and you gave me more detail, so it's fine.
Okay. So what I was trying to allude to is, this is where I was going with it, was if you lose weight, weight goes down. I'm trying to do this with my hands. Weight goes down. How many calories you burn at rest goes down.
Okay.
If our weight stays the same, but our body composition changes, so we lose a little bit of body fat and our muscle mass goes up, and not just body fat percentage changing, because that's just math, right? Like how much fat we have compared to our weight. That's body fat percentage. Pounds of body fat. We lose pounds of body fat and we gain pounds of muscle, so weight stays the same. Metabolic rate goes up. So our weight didn't change, but we burn more calories at rest because of the increase in muscle mass. If we gain weight in any way, metabolic rate goes up. So the heavier the weight, the higher the resting metabolic rate. As far as all of the other factors, like with the food we bring in, the exercise that we do, like remember we compared like walking with someone who weighed 240 pounds or something to somebody 140, right? Like it's the more you weigh, the more calories you burn in exercise. So, I mean, yeah, hopefully I answered your question there because I keep going different ways, but I try to emphasize the importance of muscle mass and how important that is, and how weight is kind of like arbitrary to an extent.
And digestion too. I mean, that plays a role. Like it depends on if there's some kind of chronic disease or something.
Yeah, well, like digestion, definitely plays a role, but generally it's not going to be different between people heavily unless there's some sort of chronic disease or something like that. Robin, what were you saying? You may have just been commenting.
I never had a question. I just turned on my camera so you knew I was here and not ignoring you when you were asking.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate that greatly.
What's the dog's name if I have to ask a question? Because I'm jealous. I miss my German Shepherd.
Her name is Remy.
Oh, I love her.
Oh.
I had a German Shepherd who died a couple years ago.
We had one that we had put down back in November. So she's our newest addition.
Right on. All right, well, if that's all anybody's got, that's it for today. And I'll be back on tomorrow at 7:00, or maybe Melody will, because it's her turn now.
All right.
All right, y'all have a great day. We'll see you later.
Thank you.